Hello, welcome back to some more Perils in Paradise card reveals. It's been a few days since we've done one of these because there was a little break. Up today are Demon Hunter as the full class set. We also got a sneak peek at one of the Warrior cards. And also, actually, we're going to start with a little bit of news in case you were wondering about the old Hearthstone game right now. There was actually a hotfix today. And they removed Splish Splash Whelp from the game. Very rare occurrence in Hearthstone for them to do this, at least from what I can remember. Druid is so strong right now in Hearthstone, and this card is probably one of the biggest enablers of it being disgustingly OP. They've simply removed this card from the game. Not nerfed it, just removed it. I assume it's going to come back with some sort of once or twice per game effect on it or something like that, or maybe it's going to get a mana increase, I don't know. Basically, the issue of this card was, it was a card that used to see play in Druid, aka Natural Growth, for 3 mana, on a 2 mana 1/1 minion. And that was too strong, especially when you bear in mind that you could copy this card fairly easily. And it just led to the point where Druid would get to mana crystals 10, while you were like mana crystal 4 or 5. And that's not very fair or a fun way to play Hearthstone, so in anticipation of the new set, I think they have decided to take this out of the game. Also not helped by the fact that the anomalies, I think as a general whole, help this Druid deck more than hinder it, so yeah, it's been a little bit of a situation in Standard right now. But anyway, if you're avoiding Druidstone, I actually think this card being removed from the combo Druid deck, or whatever you want to call it, probably is actually big enough change to nerf into the ground. It just won't get up to insane mana crystals quickly. Doomkin is still a thing, but at the point of Doomkin, at least you can get to 5 mana crystals right with your opponent. So yeah, I think that's not a bad decision from the Hearthstone team. Anyway, let's get back to the reveals. Demon Hunter, we've only seen one card so far, it's Patches the Pilot, and I think this is a pretty solid card. 1 mana 1/1 Demon Pirate with Battlecry, shuffle 6 parachutes into your deck that summon a 1/1 pirate with charge when drawn. It's a Patches you want to draw. Now, as a reminder, a couple of days ago we saw Shaman, and Shaman can tourist in Demon Hunter land. They have Carefree Cookie, and also as a reminder, they had matching outfits. These were like the only 2 cards that really had any synergy with some sort of minion-based deck. And I did mention with Carefree Cookie, I think the card is pretty weak, but if there's a token Demon Hunter package, which Patches sort of suggested there were going to be, you never know, maybe it's actually a pretty good card. Spoilers, there is a token package, so that actually elevates my assessment of Carefree Cookie considerably. Now, I will also say, Demon Hunter, their tourist goes into Priest land, and we have no idea about Priest. We've seen literally none of the cards so far, so bear in mind some of these cards might be intended to use with the Priest cards from their set, and we literally have no idea what that is going to be. We can assume some things, though, as we go through. Anyway, the first card we got earlier on today, Sigil of Skydiving, a 2 mana fell spell. At the start of your next turn, summon 3 1/1 pirates with charge. Now, this is going to be somewhat interesting. In the past, Demon Hunter had access to Sigil of Summoning. This is a 2 mana shadow spell, where at the start of your turn, you would summon 2 2/2s demons with taunt. Now, 1/1 with charge. That is a 1 mana card, typically. A 2/2 with taunt, you might argue, is around about a 1.5 minion for standard. It's probably not 2, it's 1.5, there or thereabouts. So actually, you might argue the Sigil of Summoning, which by the way saw 0 play, it's actually better value, because you're taking the turn off, you're getting like 4.5 mana worth of minions out of Sigil of Summoning, and that wasn't good enough, it was just too bad. Skydiving, you're taking a turn off, and you're getting 3 mana worth of minions? That's stupid, right? Surely this isn't good. Actually, you're wrong. There's a huge difference between this card and the previous card, and that is basically all of the pirate support we've seen so far. There is such a huge difference between generating pirates versus generating demons. Treasure Distributor, obviously insane if you can have this stuck on the board with your Sigil of Skydiving, because then suddenly your Treasure Distributor is getting insane stats, and it's turning your 1/1s into 2/1s. If you can get a Coconut Cannoneer onto the board after this is where maybe you coin Sigil, then on turn 2 you throw your Coconut Cannoneer into the board in the middle of these 1/1s, and you get another 1 damage to your book. It's almost like turning them into 2/1s again. Hosen or Roughhouser, again, nice curve. You play your 2 mana do nothing. On turn 3, you get the 3 1/1s, sort of protected, you know, they weren't on the board for your opponent to deal with. And then suddenly they start charging, and they are starting to gain +1/+1. That's actually pretty disgusting, right? Similarly, you can put a Celseed Captain onto the board as well to turn them into 2/2s, but only, like, you know, as long as the Captain is on board. And then there's stuff like the Sailboat Captain. By the way, this isn't all the pirates. There are more pirates here than I've put on it, but the pirates quality is so good that I think Sigil of Skydiving, and actually I think this token package in general, just to jump ahead a bit, is legitimately going to be a scary package. I think it's going to be one of the few packages I've seen so far that I can see pushing towards this tier 1 region. Also, as a word of note, and another deck that may spawn from this, and actually maybe will be the stronger form of it, Carefree Cookie, you wanted minions to die. Sigil of Skydiving, you play it on turn 2, turn 3 you play your Cookie, you get 3 1/1s with charge. You know, you can charge the minions into your opponent's minions, and they come back as 2-drops instead, in which case Sigil of Skydiving basically is a 6-mana cheat, right? Plus get 3 damage. That's really good! That being said, though, I still think that is somewhat underwhelming, because actually having charge on a text of a minion is really strong. There's a reason why you don't see too many charge minions, or at least you shouldn't see too many charge minions in the game. It was a really strong keyword, possibly broken keyword. Personally, I don't think you should ever print a charge neutral card again. They have this set, of course, but I just don't think every class should have access to charge. I think it's unhealthy for some classes, aka Paladin, right now, to have access to charge. So I feel like it's a bit of a waste to use your charge up into trading with minions, but maybe you only do that sometimes with the Cookie. Perhaps you play your 3 1/1s, you hit the face, and if your opponent gets into a situation where, you know, they can't clear the 2/2, but they can clear a 1/1 and you get another value from it, maybe that is fine. Or maybe you just put Carefree Cookie on a deck simply so that Shaman can put Demon Hunter cards into their deck. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, actually, there are some good reasons. Trusty Companion is extremely good in these tokeny single tri-based decks. You drop this on one of your 1/1 pirates with charge, you draw some more pirate support, you give the minion +2/+3, so it becomes a 3/4 charger with draw a card. That's actually pretty good. You might want to put Flame Tongue Totem into your deck, you put it in the middle of your chargers, and then suddenly, you know, your 3 1/1 chargers, 2 of them are 3/1s instead, and you're pushing 7 damage instead. That's actually really frightening, and both these cards saw play in Totem Shaman, which was the last aggressive-y zoo shaman-y based deck that existed. Also, currently, Thrall's Gift is in Standard. That can give you a Bloodlust. Imagine playing Sigil Skydiving ×2 on turn 4. Haha, 4 mana do nothing, I know. They won't be laughing though on the next turn if you play a Bloodlust from Thrall's Gift. You do need a coin for doing this, but you just say do it on 6 then instead, and we do this on 5. And suddenly you have 6 charging pirates out there with 4 attack each. They're all 4/1s. Hey, quick maths. 6 times 4. That's 24 damage. That is disgusting. So I actually legitimately think this Shaman Demon Hunter hybrid is going to be a thing. It's going to be an aggressive token-based deck, and it's going to be really scary to play against, irrespective of the Carefree Cookie effect, which I actually think is sort of weak. You're going to have to put Cookie in your deck simply because the other cards are so good that it necessitates it. I'd also point out for this, we said at the beginning of this that matching outfits is one of the more minion zoo-based cards you might want in one of these matchups. I actually think it's really bad, though, with these 1/1 pirates. We mentioned it before that you kind of need something that has a bit more of a mana cost to it to evolve it. I think these 1/1s are just not worth it. Like, 4 mana to evolve a 1/1 that costs 1 more, and you get a copy of it. That's not great value, right? Ideally, you would want something that, you know, trades into something and then evolve it. And then maybe you're speaking, but I think this won't actually see play in that deck. Also, I think the mana cost is simply too high. The curve I'm envisaging right now for this deck is very low. Like, below 3 mana all of the cards currently is what I'm thinking. This being said, though, there is another card currently in Shaman right now called Wave of Nostalgia, which transforms all minions into random legendary ones from the past. And actually, this Sigil of Skydiving is a pretty nice way to hide minions, so to speak, in the ether. Maybe you drop down 2 Sigils of Skydiving, you get the 6 minions, you charge for 6 damage, Wave of Nostalgia, and turn your 6 1/1s into legendary minions from the past. And surely they have to be better than 1/1 with charges, right? You know, that might legitimately be a thing. Maybe you do put this aggro deck out there, and you just have Wave of Nostalgia in there as some sort of finisher, so to speak, or just some great mana cheat. I can see, I think the Sigil of Skydiving is actually going to be a really, really strong card. Oh, one final thing, we mentioned with the old Razzle Dazzler that we were looking for a Fel spell from the Peril set, and this is the Fel spell from the Peril set. I actually think it's pretty good. I think there is a world where you might put this in your Razzle Dazzle spell school deck. Do I think that deck's going to be good? Not really, but it's just to bear in mind you do have this Fel spell if you want it. We also have the new location, Dangerous Cliffside. 4 mana, 3 durability location. Summon 2/1/1 pirates with charge. After your hero attacks, reopen this. Okay, you're now getting the theme of part of the Demon Hunter package. They want to generate all these cheap charging tokens, and your face is just going to get machine gunned down, and it's going to be really obnoxious to play against it. You're going to need Taunt, you're going to need Lifesteal, and some classes don't have access to that, so good luck playing against this deck if you don't have any form of healing or armor gain for your hero. It's going to be really hard. Anyway, on the base of this card, actually, it's pretty bad. But obviously, for the encapsulation of the entire set, this is going to be a pretty good card. It's 4 mana to get 2 mana worth of minions out. Now, obviously, your hero attacking is pretty easy to do as Demon Hunter. You push this nice little button here. Still, though, that combination is 5 mana to get 4 1/1s with charge, which is kind of like a 4 mana-ish minion. Charge doesn't quite scale the way that normal minions do. So actually, you might argue that 4 random 1/1 charges is actually worth more than 4 mana on the effect. It's more than the sum of the individual parts. But just taking that as a general value, it's at the very least this card is sort of like breaking even, which is normally not good enough for standard. It does also say after your hero attacks. Unfortunately, there's not many great ways of multi-attacking right now to get the full 6 minions out of this. You can do it with going down swinging. If you swing with your face after Demon Claws, and then you use going down swinging, you'll attack again, reopen the Dangerous Cliffside, and that lets you get the 6 1/1s charging out at the same time. This is a 9 mana combo that requires 2 cards and the button, and all you're getting is 6 damage from it, so it's not really worth it. It does depend on what you get from going down swinging, though. The other unfortunate thing is you have to attack before the going down swinging to get the additional, 2 1/1s. And you lose out on the 2 attack you could have also had on your weapon if you just played going down swinging first. So, debatably, it's really not worth it. But again, if your opponent's got a big board, you trade their big board with going down swinging plus your button press. By the way, spoilers, there are some other ways to gain attack in this deck, so maybe this is a board clear legitimately. And then suddenly you charge some more minions afterwards. That's a pretty big tempo swing. Again, as another reminder, pirates are worth more than the average tribe right now because there is so much pirate support. So you're going to see these 5 ragtag bunch in a lot of the future cards. I say a lot, I think it's 1 more. And that's Adrenaline Fiend. 2 mana, 2/2 Demon Pirate. After a friendly pirate attacks, give your hero +1 attack this turn. Alright, that's the dream, right? This is the package. Patches, Sigil of Skydiving, Dangerous Cliffside. You start swinging with all of your charging pirates, your face gets additional attack, and it just snowballs into a disgusting smorgasbord of damage. Again, this is kind of like treating your minions of having the charging minions 2/1 instead. It's like doubling their attack. So Adrenaline Fiend, I think, is actually a disgustingly strong card with this very aggressive deck. Again, obviously, significantly improved with the pirate package, where there are a lot of ways to improve the attack of your pirates and push even more damage than, is just on the text of the individual cards. So I really can see this deck working out very nicely. Now, Adrenaline Fiend also has some additional synergies. So, Puppet Slither Spear. If you gain a ton of attack from Adrenaline Fiend, and realistically, you might have 7 minions on board, you might give your face another +7 damage. If you can get... Actually, no, you can't do that. You can only get 6. Scrap that, you get to +6 damage, and one of your minions is Sock Puppet Slither Spear. Hey, suddenly your Sock Puppet Slither Spear has 7/3 stat line. That's really scary when you're taking, charge damage for 6, 7 from this, and then 6 from your face. That is a lot of damage potentially incoming. Again, you might point out the numbers and that doesn't quite work out because, well, I guess the Adrenaline Fiend, if, you can get it to attack, that would work out. But more realistically, it's going to be something a bit lower than that. I do think the Sock Puppet Slither Spear, though, may see some play in this deck with its synergy with Adrenaline Fiend. Even if you only hit, 3 minions, if you turn this into a 1 mana 4/3, that's pretty horrible, right? Also worth noting, these are Demon Pirates, so they're actually pretty well tutored for with Umpire's Grasp. Also helps to give your face more damage, which means the Adrenaline Fiend gets more bang for its buck. Now, I do appreciate I'm using the tutored card to improve the card to do the tutoring. It doesn't really make sense. It's the chicken and egg situation. That being said, Patches is also a Demon Pirate, so there are actually a few cards you might want to hit in your deck with the Umpire's Grasp. So I think pushing this additional damage is going to be the way this deck works. I basically see it as like the Window Shopper deck, but before Window Shopper comes up. You're just not going to use the Window Shopper part anymore. Also worth noting, Demon Hunter doesn't have a way to get multi-attack in terms of like attacking the same character twice. Shaman, though, does. They have it in the form of Horn of the Windlord. So potentially if you do this Shaman Demon Hunter hybrid, you potentially get a Horn of the Windlord up with 2 charges at the very least with Wind Fury. You give your hero a bunch of attack, and then you get more bang for your buck. If you could ever get it up to 15, so plus 12 attack on the weapon, it's lethal. It's a one-shot lethal, assuming, there's no taunt in the way. I don't think that will ever be a thing, but you're going to be able to put enough pressure on via the plinky damage that I legitimately think this could be a finisher. You might only need it to get plus 4 attack instead, plus 14 damage to finish off a deck that you've been aggressively hitting them in the face for. I think that's a legitimate win condition. Also worth noting, Sandart Elemental is another way to get Wind Fury on your face via Shaman. This card doesn't see that much play. It's seeing a little bit of play in the Highlander Shaman deck. But you play your Sandart Elemental, you get plus 1 attack and Wind Fury at some point, and you'll always have that mini that gives your face Wind Fury, which synergizes so nicely with the Adrenaline Fiend to push disgusting damage. And you might want to run both of these things. Just keep smoking with the face. That might be a thing. Face damage, Shaman, Demon Hunter. Okay. And by the way, you could also run this aggressive package with stuff like the Nature Shaman package, because part of the reason the Nature Shaman package has dropped off is that the reach isn't quite there on this deck anymore. They can still pump out a big chunk of damage though, so maybe you go aggressive with your minion-based build, you're charging all these pirates in, you're playing your pirates, you're doing your treasure distributor, all of that jazz, and you get to around turn 6 or 7, and suddenly you just beam off some nature spells and just machine gun your opponent down that way as well. It kind of reminds me of the idea of the hybrid imp deck where you ran the imp package in Warlock and eventually finish people off with the Abyssal Curses. Maybe you can do something like that as well with this archetype. Very, very interesting. By the way, just as one final note for this, Window Shopper Demon Hunter is not particularly strong anymore. It's been, nerfed considerably over time. And I think it's only going to get worse now. These are 2 cards you don't really want to get with your Window Shopper. You're making the pool of demons more dilute, which therefore makes Window Shopper worse. I will say getting Patches on the mini is probably worth it with Window Shopper, and actually for the Adrenaline Fiend as well, if you are running any form of pirates, which you probably aren't in your Window Shopper deck. But I don't think either of them are particularly worth it at like a 5 mana cost, so yeah, I think the Window Shopper deck probably will be dead and buried after this set. Okay, next card up, we have Paraglide, 3 mana spell for Demon Hunter. Both players draw 3 cards, Outcast, only you do. I think this card is a nod back to Glide, which was a 4 mana spell that shuffled your hand into your deck and you drew 4 cards. If you ever outcast it though, your opponent did the same. And the idea of this obviously was that you would go down to 0 cards, and you would play this as the Outcast, aka the last card in your hand, and your opponent would have more than 4 cards, and you would basically cause them to discard like 4 or 5 cards. And I think when this card was coming out, people were really worried about it. They thought, like, this is going to be a really strong card. It's disruption, it's big card draw, very good for aggressive decks. From what I remember, this card didn't actually ever really hit it off. I don't think the set really was suited for it, so Glide didn't really work. And funnily enough, I'm not sure Paraglide will work either. There's probably better ways to draw in Demon Hunter. You obviously don't want to give both players 3 cards. 3 mana draw 3 is obviously incredible. It's really worth it. Your opponent getting 3 cards as well, though, it's almost always not worth it, especially if you want to put this in an aggro deck. You might not want to, but if you're putting this in your aggro deck as a refill, the last thing you want to do is give your opponent more chances to draw answers. And basically that's what Paraglide does. Obviously, though, if you can draw down to 0, you can get the Outcast card off, and maybe that is good enough. And this is kind of, alluding back to this super hyper aggro deck. Your mana curve might be low enough that you can get this Outcast more easy, right? One of the issues with Outcast is if you get any chunky, expensive spell, it's really hard to move a card that is being drawn on your right side all the way over to the left to Outcast it again. And similarly, if you want to get it back onto the right side, you basically have to play the card you draw every single turn, and sometimes that is not easy. If every card in your deck is 2 or lower, you're probably going to get Paraglide to the left side of your hand fairly easily, so maybe you do play this with this hyper-aggressive pirate deck. You just keep going bang, bang, bang with your pirates, then you Paraglide as a refill, and only you draw the 3 cards. I actually can see that to some degree, so maybe Paraglide does see some play, but you're going to have to be very cautious with your deck building, because if you play... Honestly, if you're playing cards that are 4 or more mana in your Paraglide deck, spoilers ahead, there might be a card you might want to play, who knows. You have to be really careful, because you're not going to be easily able to put it onto the left side of your hand, at least in a very quick amount of time. By the way, this might be the card that you would want to put in this deck. Arana Thrill Seeker, 5 mana 5/6, the Priest Tourist minion. Damage your hero takes on your turn is redirected to a random enemy. Oh, cool. Demon Hunter has had Blightborn Tamsin printed for them. Probably one of the most hated cards ever to exist. It has caused so much damage to Wild that people want to vomit blood at any opportunity they see it. Yeah, they've printed this on a minion without having to do the quest. You don't need to complete the ritual. You don't need to get the Blightborn Tamsin that way. You don't need to do the Demon Seed questline, sorry. You just get it. It's on a minion. Now, obviously, there are some differences here. Firstly, it's not a rest of the game effect. You only get the effect of Arana while Arana is on the field. Tamsin was for the rest of the game, so there was a lot more means for you to combo your opponent down, because you didn't have to do it in 1 turn. You could do it in 2, 3, 4. You get the deal with that. Also worth pointing out, there's not a lot of ways for Demon Hunter to do damage to their own face. There's literally no card right now that says, you know, this effect happens, deal 3 damage to your face. It doesn't exist in Demon Hunter. And I don't think it exists in Priest right now, bearing in mind this is the Priest Tourist. That might imply Priest is going to get that effect. In fact, I'm almost certain Priest will have cards that say, you take X damage, you do something. Maybe we're going to get some sort of shadowy Priest deck. I don't quite know. That's maybe a bit too much of a reach, but yeah, Demon Hunter doesn't have great ways to do damage to their own face. However, one way they can do it is just with a weapon. So if you like quick pick an opponent's minion, you don't take the damage of the minion, and it gets redirected to a random enemy, which to some degree you can hand wave it a little bit. A lot of minions have more attack, or at least as much attack as health. It's almost like a deadly shot tied to your 5/6. Now, I do appreciate that deadly shot can't hit the opponent's face. That would be too strong. So in theory, you might hit a minion with Arana Thrill Seeker. Let's say you hit a 5. Let's just say you hit the 5/6. You might want the 5 damage to hit that minion again to kill it. It might go to the face instead, in which case, you know, you've got a 5/5 up and you're basically going to lose your Arana for it. So I don't think that is a great situation, but maybe it's just okay. Now, obviously, the other way of doing this is, I'm out of cards. What if you go into a fatigue state? For this to kill your opponent, assuming they have 0 minions on board, you need to draw 8 more cards. That works out as 35 damage. That's basically just, you know, 1 + 2 + 3 + 4, blah, 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 all the way up to 8. However, because unlike the Demon Seed, this is random enemies, it's not just to the face. If your opponent has a full board of minions, you might need up to, like, you know, 15, actually maybe more than that, because the 15 is assuming that there are 7 minions on the board and your most 7 damaging hits hit those minions and then kill them. They might not kill those minions, or, you know, there might be death rattles, so I actually think you're going to need to draw somewhere between, like, 12 and 18 cards to feel fairly comfortable that you're going to get the kill with Arana via fatigue. Now, Demon Hunter is classically probably the best class at drawing cards. They have so many draw options, and actually ways to draw a decent number of cards. If you're going into a hand-based deck, stuff like Weight of the World can be like a really, really disgusting draw engine. Potentially, you know, if your opponent's got like 8 cards and you have very few, you could forge it to draw as many cards as your opponent has, and then +2 on top of that. It could be like a +6, +7 card draw. You may know you don't see this a lot in the game. That's probably because you don't see enough hand-based decks for Weight of the World to be viable. Also, there is Glaive Tar, and I think this is the more likely option if you're going to try and do this fatigue-based combo. You're going to try and set up a ton of Outcast cards into your Glaive Tar. You're going to try and get to draw like the 8 cards you're going to need. maybe find some way of nuking the board down, and then you're just going to break Glaive Tower with a Rana on the field and just kill your opponent that way. And also, this might end up in this really aggressive deck. I did mention that you might want to be careful putting expensive cards in your deck, but if you do the deck with just inexpensive cards and you have Arana as the win condition, you might not need the 30 damage. You might only need to, draw 5 or 6 cards instead to finish them off. And it's much easier to, draw and empty your hand when the cards are cheap, and this aggressive base deck is going to be pretty cheap. So maybe that is the name of the game here. You play this really aggressive token based deck. You draw your entire deck as quickly as is humanly possible, and then you finish people off with Arana. You just put Arana on the board, draw maybe 4 or 5 more cards, and maybe that is the win condition. I'm not sure about it myself, but it's something you could bear in mind. I actually think more realistically, you're going to be looking at what Priest has to see if they can abuse Arana, because I'm not convinced Demon Hunter can do it in a particularly efficient way right now. One final word of note, though, is a real fuck you to Plague Death Knights. If you have your Arana and you draw a bunch of Plagues and, they're reaching the end of the game, the Plagues hurt your opponent instead. The effects do go off on you, but there is a legitimate world where you just kill your opponent with Plagues. I live for that moment, so I do like the idea of Arana doing it for me. We also then have the weird Demon Hunter package. I think it's meant to be some sort of big Demon Hunter package, but I don't really know. We have All-Terrain Voidhound, 7 mana, 5/8 demon. Whenever this attacks, give your hero +5 attack this turn. People I saw on the internet were like, oh, it's Park Panther for Demon Hunter. Park Panther was a really good card. There's a reason why Park Panther, though, was a really good card. It had Rush. The effect itself is actually not that good, it's okay, but when you combine this with Rush, Park Panther was basically 4 mana, 4/4, deal 3 damage, and that was good enough, right? All-Terrain Voidhound does not have the Rush on it, therefore it won't see any play. Now, there is a way to give it Rush. You could use Through Fel and Flames, which, if you can Finale it, turns into a 7 mana, 6/9, nice, which has Rush, and if you attack, you get +5 attack. Would that card see play? Yes, it would, but this is a 2-card combo, and it's really expensive to get it off as well. There is this other cost that it happens later, therefore your opponent can do more things about it. Park Panther was in this nice spot where it was like fairly aggressive, but equally you could do a little bit of sneaky tradey things with it, and your opponent might not be able to answer this minion. You might get another attack off. I think by the time you're looking at doing this with All-Terrain Voidhound, aka turn 7, they're probably going to be able to kill this if it became a real problem. So I'm actually not convinced this card will see any play. Nor do I think it'll go into the aggressive deck. I think it's just too expensive. I think you're more likely to want to draw through your entire deck, aka have a cheap mana curve. Especially if you want to use the Glide, or the Paraglide, sorry, to draw 3 cards. You can't run a 7 mana card in that deck. It just simply won't work. So I think this is some other deck. And I also want to point out at this point that Big Demon Hunter basically has never been meta, like, at the top end. I don't think it's got enough support right now to consider this being useful for it, so I just don't see it being a thing. How about, though, with Cliff Dive? 6 mana spell, summon 2 minions from your deck and give them Rush. They go back to your deck at the end of turn. Okay, this is another way to give Rush. Clearly it's meant to be synergized with the previous card. We have had in the past cards that summon things from the deck. We've had Maxima Blastenheimer that summoned something from your deck, it hit the opponent's face, and then died. Cool. We had Darkest Hour, which honestly I didn't remember even existed, which destroyed all your friendly minions, and for each one that was destroyed, you summon a random minion from your deck. And then probably the most classic of these is Yasharaj, Rage and Bound, which at the end of the turn put a minion from your deck into the battlefield. Now, this is 2 minions. However, also it's 2 minions with Rush, and with Rush, it means you get to choose where they attack. The downside of this, though, is that Maxima, which saw a bit of play, but not, again, particularly good, was very nice with a Death Rattle, because you knew the minion was going to die. You would get the Death Rattle effect. Also, it was going to go to the face, therefore you pushed a lot of damage to your opponent's face. Darkest Hour didn't really see any play, so I think I'll just skip over this one. Yasharaj saw some play way back in early Hearthstone for just cheating out giant guys. Back when there weren't all these incredible battle cries, and this is getting to the meat and potato of the situation. The problem with Cliff Dive is that you don't get the battle cries of your minions, and actually if you go through Hearthstone currently, especially in Demon Hunter, there's actually not that many cards that are particularly great to summon. Most of them have battle cries. There are a few Death Rattles out there, but they're kind of few and far between. Another way to think of this card is kind of like a Meteor-like effect for Mage. And this did see a bit of play back in Ungoro, I think it was, for Meteor. Meteor, you know, it's 15 damage +4/+4 potentially, so, you know, you could see it as like a 23 damage effect. Normally the Meteor itself killed, you know, whatever the minion was, it did do the 15 damage to the minion. Normally it only needs to do, you know, 5 or 6. So you might argue that Cliff Dive, it does enough damage to minions for the cost that it's probably more of this control-based Meteor-like card. And I do think that's probably where this will slot into some sort of control-based Demon Hunter deck. Spoilers, that has never ever worked either, so good luck with Cliff Dive. There are a few cards that I think are worth pulling out of Cliff Dive. Illidari Inquisitor is one of the big ones. It does come preloaded with Rush, so you're not getting that effect off the Cliff Dive. That being said, though, if you can cheat out Illidari Inquisitor, you can always use it to attack the opponent's face, because all you have to do then is push the button one time. Illidari hits the face, and what's nice about this is it goes back into the deck for future face uses, so that's pretty nice. You can also do it with the Death Rattle cards, as I said. I'm pretty certain if they die, they won't go back into the deck. I'm actually not 100% certain on that one, but I'm pretty certain if you brought Thunderbringer out, you trade it into opponent's minion, you maybe cheat out a big Elemental and a big Beast from this. I don't think Thunderbringer would drop back into the deck again for you to, you know, do Thunderbringer things with. I'm pretty certain you would lose it, so. There are other things as well, like Sylvanas would be too bad to get the Death Rattle off on a Cliff Dive. That being said, you're basically going... Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. Sylvanas would be okay. I just feel like it's not cheaty enough is kind of the point I'm trying to make right now. Obviously, the intended thing is to grab All-Terrain Voidhound. It gives it Rush, and then you get +5 attack, and you attack your opponent's face. This 2-card combo is just simply not good enough, I think. Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Illidari Inquisitor, All-Terrain Voidhound, you pull them both out with Cliff Dive, you push the button one time, Voidhound hits something... Actually, you don't need to push the button at that point, but let's just say you push the button. It's 7 mana for 6 damage to the face, plus 8 from the Illidari. That's 14 damage. That's pretty spicy, right? So maybe that is good enough. Maybe Big Demon Hunter is good enough. Now, I also want to bear in mind with this might be more geared towards the Priest package. Priest has a lot better... a history of big minions and control-based decks, so maybe we have to wait for the Priest package to fully seal the effect of Cliff Dive. But other than that, I think it's a bit underwhelming for just Demon Hunter on its own. Another small thing I want to mention, you could also, for Rush, pull out your Titans from your deck, use one of the Titan effects, and then shuffle the Titan back into the deck. I think that's pretty weak of a turn, but maybe you want to put into your big controlled Demon Hunter deck. You might put Argus in there somewhere, and if you get Argus out, you can cheat out either the mana cheat on your hand with minions if it's a minion-based deck, which actually I don't think it will be. I think you'll use this to cheat to very specific cards, or you can just generate... is it 8 Aether stats you get from this? I can't remember now. If you get 2 2/2s or 4 2/2s. I think you get 4 2/2s, right? Maybe just cheat out 4 2/2s, and that is... good enough. We also have Skirting Death, 3 mana shadow spell. Choose a minion this turn, your hero steals 4 attack from it. Interesting. There's actually not been too many cards in the history of Hearthstone that have stolen attack from minions, at least from what I could find. Ancient Voidhound, fully from Demon Hunter, was one of them. This card saw 0 play, by the way. Normally, though, there are cards that have been printed that steal health, like Herald of Shadows, and there's a couple of others, including, you know, the Ancient Voidhound, for example. It came to the conclusion for me when I was trying to evaluate this card, like, how do I evaluate this card? And there's not a great baseline to go off. And I decided to do it this way. Humility, in Paladin, 1 mana, change a minion's attack to 1. Now, obviously, stealing 4 attack from a minion might take it to 0, so you can get a better effect from Humility. Basically, that type of effect, I'm going to treat it as about a 1 mana-ish effect. Gaining 4 attack is Feral Rage. That's a 3 mana spell. Okay? So, all in all, you're sort of cheating a mana on Skirting Death. Now, here's where things get a little bit tricky with the card, because Feral Rage gives you 4 attack guaranteed. Humility changes the minion's attack to 1, guaranteed. Skirting Death, if the minion has less than 4 attack, you will not get the full attack benefit from this. If the minion has more than, 5 attack, you're not going down to 1 attack. So, I kind of see Skirting Death as a little bit of a niche, oddly specific, bad card, so not really good is what I'm going to say about Skirting Death. I think it's a little bit overpriced, especially since it's only temporary as well. You just steal it for that turn. Now, There are reasons you might want to steal attack. Maybe you want to do this with Adrenaline Fiend. You're trying to generate this giant attack. Maybe you're trying to do it with a big weapon as well, with Wind Fury, for example, from the Shaman package. You steal 4 attack from one of your opponent's minions, or, you know, as much attack as you can steal, and it just goes into the kitty, right? And you use Wind Fury to make it even better. I think that is too specific, and it's also, this card is too expensive to put into that combo. Now, I will also point out on this card, it is choose a minion, so you could actually pick your own minion. And this is important if you're running something like Dread Deserter in your pirate package. This is a bit more expensive, I think, than what you'd want to run in that package. But if you can make it work and you charge with Dread Deserter, you do the 6 damage on the charge, you then steal 4 attack from it, and then you attack with your face into your opponent's face, and basically get a free 4 attack on the charge. Maybe that'll be a thing. I'm pretty certain it won't, though. I think it's too specific, but that's kind of where I'm foreseeing it right now. If it makes some sort of combo work, but simply 3 mana for 4 attack, I just don't think it's worth it currently. Feral Rage doesn't see play in Druid. I don't think it'll see play in Demon Hunter either. Maybe though with a big weapon though, Climbing Hook, 6 mana, 5/2 weapon. Doesn't lose durability while you control a minion with 5 or more attack. They've done it. The mad lads and ladies at the Hearthstone team have done it. Weapons Attendant has got a great weapon. Wow! You play your 6 mana, 6/4 pirate, you know, you control another pirate, of course, you've ramped into it, and you get a Climbing Hook from your deck, and you get a free swing, and bam! 5 damage for free. Wow! 6 mana, 6/4, do 5 damage. That's really good, right? You might be able to tell by my sarcastic, whiny tone that I don't actually think it is good enough. I think it's actually pretty bad. And it's, again, it's one of these cards where it's like, it doesn't seem to fit in with multiple cards from the set. It, like, has its one sibling card and then nothing else. So, I'm not sure about it, but let's delve into this a little bit. 6 mana, 5/2 weapon. That is the effect of Corrupted Ashbringer from Death Knight. Now, they do have Lifesteal on top of that, but basically, the 6 mana, 5/2 weapon isn't worth it. It was running in no decks. Bone Glaive, by the way, for 5 mana, also had a 5/2 effect with Dredge on it. That saw 0 play. So you're probably implying that 5/2 stat line would at least be on a 4 mana card. So that's one way to look at this. The next way to look at this is at 7 mana, 5/3, you had Flame Reaper in Demon Hunter. So if you get this Weapons Attendant Climbing Hook combo, you get the stat line of Flame Reaper. Flame Reaper saw 0 play, basically 0 play in Demon Hunter. Flame Reaper is I do appreciate it's 7 mana, not 6. But it's still a 5/3 with a better effect than the Climbing Hook. So that's not great news for the Climbing Hook. By the way, also Libram of Judgment is a thing that was almost basically a 7 mana 5/3 because it was so goddamn hard to corrupt. Also saw 0 play, so all in all, I think getting 1 swing off the Climbing Hook, which is probably all you're going to get if you use the Weapon Attendant combo, isn't actually worth it. I think the juice is not worth the squeeze. Therefore, you need to at least get 2 swings for this to be viable. And I just don't think that's worth it. I simply don't think it's worth it. When you also bear in mind that really, at the end of the day, all you're getting is 1 durability on your weapon for doing all of this setup, getting these big minions out there with more than 5 attack, which is, you know, it's a pretty tight niche of cards for Demon Hunter. You could have just put Air Guitarist in your deck to give your weapon 1 durability. Now, I do appreciate that Air Guitarist, you can only put 2 of them in your deck. Climbing Hook could go on for infinity. I just think that by the point you're cheating out 5 or more attack minions for a mana cost that makes it worth running the Climbing Hook rather than just running Air Guitarist in your deck or stuff to bounce the Air Guitarist back, you're probably going to beat your opponent through just generating these big guys for cheap anyway. So I think it's a card that just makes you more winning if you're already winning, and therefore you won't need it, and therefore it won't see play. That is my gut feeling. Again, we're going to have to wait to see the Priest package, because Priest also normally plays some big stuff. So if they can cheat out some low mana, high attack stuff that maybe, you know, has a negative downside on it, maybe the Climbing Hook sees play in that deck. But I don't think for the current Demon Hunter package, especially if it is meant to go into big Demon Hunter, I just don't see the dream. Finally, that's all the Demon Hunter cards. There was 1 Warrior card revealed as well. This was 2 days ago. The Rye Cleaver. 7 mana 4/2 weapon. Battle Cry and Death Rattle. Get a slice of bread. Get 2 to sandwich any minions in between. I'm not going to lie, I did not understand this card, and I still don't think I understand this card fully, but I'm going to try and explain what I think on how it works through the art of a great animation. Basically, when you play this card, you're going to get a slice of bread. You see that on the right side, and you get another slice of bread after the next death rattle, and they both go into your hand. Any minions between your slice of bread go into the sandwich, and you pay 2 mana to play your sandwich of minions. Also worth noting before I go into the cool little animation I've done, and by cool I mean it's really shit, Hunter, Taurus in Warrior, Warrior, Taurus in Druid. So Hunter could use this card, and also this could go into some of the Druid package from the Warrior Taurus side of things. But anyway, let's just say this is your board set. You're a Warrior, and you have the Rye Cleaver in hand. You play 7 mana, do nothing. Well, it's not quite 7 mana, do nothing. You get a 4/2 weapon for 7 mana, and a slice of bread goes into your hand. Then, your opponent has a turn, and you draw a card. Let's say you draw the Standardized Pack, which seems to be a pretty nice synergy with this card. You play your Standardized Pack, it gives you 5 temporary minions. You swing again and your weapon breaks, you get another slice of bread. And then the 5 minions that are in between the 2 slices of bread go into a minion sandwich, and then you pay 2 mana to cheat out all those minions onto the board, and your opponent cries. That, I think, is the name of the game. That's sort of the game plan. Now, I have a few problems with this card. Firstly, there is one obvious synergy, Standardized Pack. You add 5 taunt minions to your hand, at the end of the turn you discard them. If you can put them between 2 slices of rye bread, you don't discard them anymore, they get protected into the sandwich, and you're probably going to cheat out a decent amount of mana. I don't know what the average taunt minion cost is, I'm going to assume it's somewhere around the 3-4 range. So you're probably cheating out 20 mana worth of minions for 9 total mana. Which is pretty good, right? There are ways of doing this as well with stuff like Rockmaster Voom, but again, it kind of depends on what you draw into your sandwich, right? Because your hand is locked in the order. You can't move the cards around your hand easily. You could do it with something like Zola, where you play a minion from the left side of your hand, you put a Zola on the board, it bounces to the right side of your hand and goes into the sandwich. There's also some meme shit you could do with Collargan as well, where you play the Collargan, you hit one of your opponent's minions, it goes into your hand, you hit with the Rye Cleaver and you make a sandwich of their minion, and it goes into the sandwich, which means Collargan will never have to give it back again, because it's in a sandwich. Okay, here's my problem though with this card. I'm going to be somewhat generous. Let's say that a 4/2 weapon currently in Hearthstone is worth around 2.5 mana-ish. Fiery War Axe, which sees 0 play, well, it did see play in the past, but didn't anytime recently, is a 2 mana 3/2. There's actually no 4/2 weapon with no effect on it in Hearthstone right now, so we're just going to have to extrapolate a little bit. Let's say it's a 2.5 mana card. That basically means on the turn you play Rye Cleaver, you've wasted 4.5 mana. So you need to get this 4.5 mana back. Pretty sharpish, by the way, because it kind of like degrades over time, this mana cheating. You want to get it as soon as you possibly can get it. And by the way, it's not even just that. The sandwich costs 2 mana. So actually, the minions that go into the sandwich have to be worth more than 6.5 mana. And other than doing this with the standardized, the Taunt Pack, or whatever it's called, I don't actually think of a good way of doing this for Warrior. So I think that's going to be the problem with the Rye Cleaver. Now, it does depend. We haven't seen any of the Warrior cards. Maybe the Warrior package will be adding random stuff to your hand. So we're going to have to wait and see on the Rye Cleaver. But it's a huge tempo down to play it. And you're going to have to mana cheat pretty hard to make this worth it. Now, worth noting again, Hunter can use this card, and Hunter might actually use it better than Warrior, at least from what we've seen currently. They have means of drawing Beast via Messenger Buzzard, or even something like Master's Call if you run an entire deck full of Beasts. You could cheat out some big lads, like Tyrannosaurus, the Beached Whale, the 420, because one of the nice things about some of the Hunter cards, and one of the downsides again of the Rye Cleave, by the way, you lose the battle cries on the minions you're playing. So if you've got any battle cries in there, you're out of luck. Hunter actually has a few cards in their library that actually don't have good battle cries. They have negative battle cries and they have big stats. The big monkey guy, I forgot his name, he also has a negative battle cry, and you would love to put him in the Rye Cleaver instead and cheat him out for 2. So I legitimately think Hunter might have a Rye Cleaver deck where you put some big beasties in there and, you make a sandwich of the big beasties, and then you play the sandwich and the beasties go everywhere. That might actually be a legit thing, because honestly, cheating out a Beach Whale, that's pretty disgusting for some decks. 420 taunt? If you're a minion-based deck, I know, Hearthstone, lol, Standard, lol, 2024, lol, minion-based deck, lol. Yeah, it might not be a thing, but, you know, some people are going to get tripped up by that bad boy. Also, in Druidland, we haven't seen the full Druid set, but we are aware that they have Hiking Trail, the location, and that is another way to cheat out minions into your hand. So maybe you play the Rye Cleaver after you put Hiking Trail on the board, and you set up some sort of combo where you draw many taunt minions, or you discover them from Hiking Trail, and because you're discovering them, you can pick the quality of the card, they go into the Rye Cleaver, and you cheat them out that way. Maybe that is a legitimate strategy. I'm not sure. We're going to have to see what comes from Warrior, Hunter, and Druid, to be fair. Which are all classes that we have left. And that's all the reveals for now. I think tomorrow is Priest, and there's only 4 classes left. It's literally Priest, Hunter, Warrior, and then the final cards from Druid. So we're getting close to the end. Let me know if any classes right now, or archetypes, that you think are going to be a great deck, because the meta is going to be really shaken up at that point, because as I said, the combo Druid deck, probably dead at this point. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!